Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gigging Out, a podcast about the people and businesses leading the gig economy. I'm Dana Gagnon, CMO at Dlivrd, and this is our final episode of Season 2 of Gigging Out. We'll be on hiatus for a few months, but I have a great one for you today. I interview Ashley Campos, Chief Strategy Officer at Dlivrd. Ashley is a veteran entrepreneur in the gig space. She's owned 2 delivery businesses and an on-demand virtual assistant company. We talk about the changes she's seen in the delivery industry over the last decade and her predictions for its future. We also discuss what gig drivers are looking for and what it takes to create an amazing experience for them. She shares what makes Dlivrd such an inspiring place to work and the company's plans for future growth and expanding into new areas. I hope you enjoy our discussion as much as I did. Ashley, I'm so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I've been wanting to interview you for a while. You have a super interesting background. You've owned your own delivery businesses, a restaurant, you have a virtual assistant business, and now you're the Chief Strategy Officer at delivery company Dlivrd. I would just love for you to start off by telling the audience a little bit about your background.
Oh, sure. So when I first, years ago when I first started, I didn't have any inkling that I would end up in the restaurant or the delivery space. But kind of life led me down a different path where ended up opening up a franchise restaurant, Jimmy John's to be exact, which really catapulted me in the world of delivery because back in the day, you could get 3 things for lunch. You can get pizza, you can get Chinese, and you can get Jimmy John's delivered. And we all know that the mantra was freaky fast. So I learned a lot about delivery. And that led me into opening up my own delivery service myself. And that eventually led me into working with Dlivrd after our delivery service got acquired by Dlivrd. And now here I am, fast forward, about 10 years or 11 years since the whole restaurant industry started.
Wow, that's wild. I can imagine you've seen a lot of change in the delivery industry over that time. Can you speak to some of the biggest, changes that have occurred over the last decade?
Sure. I think the biggest change has been the third-party delivery and that shift from every restaurant doing it themselves to the third parties coming in and the ability for consumers just to be able to get everything and anything they wanted delivered. So it helped us from a delivery company standpoint, but definitely hurt us on the Jimmy John side when it was all local and all our own drivers. And now we have all of this competition. And when third party entered the market, you definitely felt that as a restaurant. So I see it from both sides, which is why we took on both sides. We could be a part of the delivery space and we could be a part of the restaurant space itself.
Yeah. Can you speak to that both sides model? And I think you're speaking specifically, well, not only Dlivrd, but some of the other delivery businesses. Can you talk about how you kind of straddle both of those worlds?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when you're a restaurateur, you're so protective of your brand, and having some of the other third parties come in there and take your food, you're worried that you might not just get the quality that it would be if you were doing it themselves, because the one that gets the angry customer call is the restaurant itself, right? They're not calling whoever delivered their food. So I think coming at it from a Dlivrd perspective, we're super in tune with what the restaurants want and the care that we put into making sure that each delivery is really delivered with the way that the restaurant intended the food to get there. Dlivrd focuses a lot on catering, so it's super high touch. And one of the most exciting parts is that we have some new AI that's come out. We affectionately call him Frederick. But he even has the ability, he has the ability to pair specific drivers with specific restaurant brands or delivery brands to make sure that the right experience is had by everyone.
Oh, that's fast. I did not know about that. Can you speak to, is that something you built internally? Did you outsource it? Kind of what was the impetus for Frederick?
Sure. So it's, you spoke with Chris before, and he's just a genius when it comes to all this stuff. So it's something that Dlivrd itself has built out. We launched it just a few months ago, but it really came off of restaurant brands saying that I'm different and I need something specific, or the drivers who come to my restaurant need to be able to do these things specifically because that's how we want it done. So each driver, when they come into the system and they onboard with Dlivrd, they do a knowledge check And if they go through that knowledge check, they learn a little bit about the brands if they choose to. They don't have to, or they can. If they want more opportunities, they could sign up to get more knowledge checks. They go through that, and then they get a tag that says, okay, I'm now certified to deliver for brand A, B, and C, and they'll start to receive those orders. If a driver doesn't want to do it, they can just go on whatever path they choose to do.
That's super interesting. I know I've heard of, retail tools where you're like there's been certifications for people who want to work in specific retail outlets or things like that to know the brand really well for like how you can speak to the product. But I haven't, this is the first I've heard of that in the delivery space. So sounds like a really innovative thing that you're doing there. Super cool.
Yeah, and it really benefits the drivers too. I mean, everything that Dlivrd does is super driver focused because they're the heartbeat of delivery, and they need to be able to be happy and satisfied with what they're doing and grow with what they want to do or not. Some drivers are completely happy. They want to do on-demand deliveries all day. That's great. Some want to do routed logistics where they want to pick up from one place and deliver to A, B, and C and then go home. And that's great. And some just want to do catering, 1 or 2 big deliveries a day, and that's great. And so this kind of system enables them to really define their own path and figure out exactly what works for them.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, talking about driver happiness, it's, every company I speak to in this space is really focused on it because they know the competition for drivers is so fierce. They can not only deliver food for other companies, but they can do things like rideshare, pick up other gig work. What have you seen in your, decade-long career in this space, how to really create a great driver experience? What are the things that drivers are looking for that can help delivery businesses stand out?
Well, I think the number one thing is that delivery businesses have to pay their drivers well. It's super important. Time is money, and the more difficult a delivery task might be, even if it takes a less time or the longer it takes, they just have to be compensated for their time accordingly. And they have to be able to be paid fast as well. A lot of these drivers, they want their money same day, next day, and that's super important to them. And then I think the third thing, and this comes from what I've seen from a shift in my own restaurant trying to hire drivers versus all the third party, now the competition for that is they love having the choice of when to work and when not to work. Gone is the day where they want to say, you have to be here from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. They want to show up, get their deliveries done, or make how much money they want for the day, and they want to go home.
And are you seeing most drivers are working, do they have multiple apps downloaded and they're kind of jumping back and forth between various delivery companies? How have you seen that play out as there's been more and more options for them?
I think it's a pretty good split on drivers. I think the top percentage of any driver in a single app might stay in that app for a longer period of time and not jump around. So I do think there are some loyalties, and that's what we try to work towards with Dlivrd is that driver loyalty. But there is still a large amount of people that jump from app to app.
So you joined Dlivrd as the chief strategy officer after your delivery company was acquired. Can you talk about your role? What's a day-to-day, like for you?
Oh gosh, it's a little bit of everything. We talk about where we're expanding next, what we're doing, what technology we want to invest in or invest towards to make the Dlivrd platform the best way from the driver, and just kind of how we make it the best for our customers or our clients and the best for our drivers, who are also our customers, and just kind of marrying those two things together to make sure that we're providing the best bridge between those two entities.
Yeah. Speaking of clients, I mean, can you speak to a little bit about, growth strategies that you talk about or you've employed? How are you going about expanding the clients that you provide delivery services for?
Sure. So as part of the acquisition with Nimble, we brought over our salesperson over to Dlivrd. Dlivrd has done a phenomenal job growing without any sort of, sales focused person, so to speak, that being their only role. So since the acquisition, we have a salesperson. He's targeting large restaurants, chains, individual restaurants. We're going after a lot of logistics companies, not just in the restaurant industry, but small package logistics as well. So that's interesting, and a pivot for Dlivrd. That was something that Nimble was highly focused on. So now just kind of bringing those two things together as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, are there other verticals, I guess is the best way to put that you are considering getting into? Like, would you go as far as delivering of people and going into rideshare? How far do you guys talk about expanding what services you provide?
Yeah, we haven't talked too much about delivering people. I do think in the gig economy, if you ever take an Uber and you ask your driver, do they deliver food as well? They're like, no, I don't want to deliver food. I just want to deliver pizza or people. And then I think it's vice versa too. I think there's two different drivers for each. But what we are doing, when I mentioned like the logistics piece and the small package, we're trying to build out our driver schedules. So they might be able to deliver a catering order from 11 to 2. And then during their downtime in the restaurant industry is obviously between 2 and 5. So now we're pairing those lunch deliveries with some packages in the middle of the day. And then they can choose to go home or stay on until the end of lunch rush is. So we're really trying to be focused on building out that driver's entire day and the opportunity for them to earn all the time versus just for a few hours in lunchtime or dinner time.
You talked about growth in general. I mean, Dlivrd has scaled, an insane amount over the last several years that I've been familiar with the company. Can you speak to how do you guys approach deciding what's a new geographic market to open into? Are there, areas that you're really focused on right now or that you're excited about? And how does that decision-making process happen?
I don't know if we have a specific plan about the markets that we're going into directly, but we really work with our clients and see where they need expansion. Dlivrd in over 150 markets nationwide and in Canada. This year, we are focused a little bit more on expanding that Canadian marketplace, and then just building out the rings around the current areas where we're delivering.
Any particular challenges? I think you've been in Canada for maybe a little over a year now. What was it like expanding to a different country? Any particular lessons you've learned from that?
So I wasn't a part of the initial expansion, so I can't speak to when they first went over there, but I think that making sure one of the things that we're talking about now is making sure that the driver pay is going to be quick and efficient for the drivers over there. That's been a little bit of a hurdle for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I assume the sort of expectation of pay is similar in the US and Canada from drivers? Have you found that to be the case?
Yes.
Just overall, as you've been part of Dlivrd and seeing their growth, any surprising challenges with the scale of the business as you open up new markets or, grow your client base? What are some of the things that have surprised you at operating at that scale?
I think just continuing to put the right processes in place to make sure that we're keeping up with the pace of the scaling. There's a lot of things that you can do as a small company. You can be a little bit more nimble, but once you start adding all these different facets in, you really need to make sure that the process is in place so things don't get, lost in the cracks.
Yeah. So Ashley, tell me a little bit about what you like about working for Dlivrd. What are some of the things that Chris and the other leadership team is doing to make it a great place to work?
Yeah, I think the office just has a really great vibe. As you know, Dana, not culture, a vibe. And everybody just comes to work with a purpose and a mission and, gets it all done. And everybody likes to work hard, play hard. Also, Dlivrd is ramping up, I should say, all their philanthropic efforts. We just did something this past 2 weeks. We've done 2 of these delivering gifts for grads, and I don't think it's out there. So Chris, don't kill me yet if this goes out first before the videos do. But we pulled drivers and they submitted special graduates in their life, whether it was a friend or a daughter or a sister or a mom or whoever it was. And we just gave away $1,000 to these new grads. Towards what they were doing in life, whether it was a trade school, whether it was going to college or going to the military. And we have some really, really great stories behind it and got to meet some really incredible people. And that's really nice. Not every company you see just really supporting their driver partners or like that.
I love that so much. I've seen that you do a lot in the community too. You do a lot in Philadelphia where you're based, but to do that with drivers and to bring it back to the people who are supporting the business is really neat. Why do you think philanthropy is important to the core of Dlivrd?
I think it's just born in that. It's super important for Chris to give back to the community in every way that he can. He's done things like the Delivering Gifts for Grad. He gave away a scholarship to some high school students in Philly. He works with the Food Insecure to help make sure that they have food and to donate. There's just endless number of small projects that are really near and dear to his heart, which is nice that, we actually get to execute on them and execute often, which is great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Can you speak specifically about hiring on the driver side and what sort of processes you have in place there?
Sure. So we have a really awesome people guy. His name is Brian, and he has all these secrets. So I don't even know exactly what he does, but he's a miracle worker with bringing on drivers in different markets. But I think just doing a little bit more automation and building out the driver experience when they first onboard is super important. Making sure that they're able to get their pay quickly is top priority for them. And then just making sure that once they get on the platform that they're getting orders quickly after they've completed that onboarding to keep them engaged.
Yeah, that's such great advice. We see that a lot of drivers will just drop out of a onboarding process if it's too slow. So they'll, apply to work at a company and then never even actually complete that first delivery because it's taking too long. So the fact that you're speeding that up and then also getting them their first income right away is brilliant.
Yeah, and it's about speeding it up, but also slowing it down because we want those drivers that want to take the extra time to fulfill all those knowledge checks and to fulfill the process, because we want to make sure that they're going to show up and be committed to doing a good job on their first delivery also.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I assume are there particular, traits in a driver that you're looking for? And is that all coming out in the hiring process? Can you speak to the vetting of drivers a little bit?
So I think one of the main things that you want to look for in a driver is just making sure that they are reliable and that they're going to show up for the client. We have a promise to make that we're going to be there. So we need to make sure that the driver is there as well, which comes out in the onboarding process by making them take a couple steps and watch a few onboarding tutorials or videos and then going through those knowledge checks. That helps to vet them. Obviously, we also do all the normal security and safety and insurance vetting that's required for drivers as well.
You served on the board of the Restaurant Delivery and Marketing Association for quite some time. Can you speak to sort of the community that exists of independent delivery businesses out there and why that community is so valuable?
Oh, absolutely. It's a community that not a lot of people know about. Everybody knows about Uber and DoorDash and a couple other of the players out there, but Dlivrd is a huge delivery service. And we run into people every day that have no idea who we are. And then there is a bunch of local delivery service providers in many, many cities across the US. And the community is so important there because the drivers are, again, they're just better qualified, more vetted. The owners of these small delivery services put a lot of effort into making sure that the local restaurants and the local delivery driver partners that they have are truly supported.
I've learned a lot about delivery over the last few years, but I was surprised, I think as a consumer only, I'm not an entrepreneur in this space. You don't realize how many different businesses are really at play to get something delivered to your doorstep. So it's been fascinating to learn about that. Kind of taking your own experience, what are some of the things that you've learned from owning your own delivery businesses that you think is really valuable for an independent owner to keep in mind?
I think just having those relationships with the drivers and the relationships with the restaurants itself is super important, especially when you're in a small community. Everybody talks, and that goes a long way. That guerrilla marketing, even that goes with knowing the owner and that owner wanting to tell somebody to use your service. It goes really far in a lot of these areas. And it's so different than the DoorDash model or, some of those other big three where they're just signing them up and putting them on their way.
Yeah. Were there things that you did when you owned your own businesses like that wouldn't be scalable at Dlivrd today, but just to get your name out there and to create business?
Yeah, sure. Going to all those business networking events that are local in the community. One of the favorite things that we did was we partnered with a local apartment complex, and we handed out a breakfast, like a little bag, and it had an apple and a muffin and a little water bottle as people left for work. And it also had a delivery coupon in it, so they can come back and order delivery, at nighttime. But we just handed those out, and that was really fun and just brightened people's day. A lot of people looked at us like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you handing me this little bag of food?" But once they had a conversation, it was fun.
I love that. I love hearing stories about unscalable things in the early days, because that's really oftentimes how you get your first clients and you get your, first consumers. So those are great examples. In terms of technology, I think I know Dlivrd has its own proprietary technology, but a lot of independent delivery companies are probably, kind of piecing together a lot of different solutions. Can you talk a little bit about the process of, what do you look for in the technology solutions you adopt either in your previous delivery companies or at Dlivrd? How do you vet them? What are you looking for them to solve for you?
There are a couple of pieces that I think are super important, and it depends on where you are in the process. If you're a brand new company, I think you have to be super focused on price of how much those solutions will cost you, because there are solutions that are better and maybe cost a little bit more, but you might not need that right away. And you can always change solutions. So I think price is super important. Tracking, making sure that your solution has something where it can send out to the customer where the food is, or the client themselves. And I think if you're going to be a DSP, which is just a delivery service provider who can take deliveries from your own marketplace, from your own website, and from other companies that might send you orders, or if you're a restaurant delivery service, you're going to look for different things in the software itself. Like, you might want to be able to have an API where you can connect to these different places. But if you're just a restaurant delivery service and you're only getting orders from your own marketplace website, then that might not be as important to you.
Any like war stories from adopting a technology in the past that maybe didn't work out for you that you could share, or kind of lessons learned from your previous lives owning businesses with tech?
Yeah, sure. So I think all of the delivery, most of the tech that's out there from the delivery management systems is all pretty good. I think one of the major challenges for us when we first started was from a reporting aspect, just kind of understanding the reports that were coming in and being able to make business decisions off of that. A lot of these tech companies, they focus on the tech, which is great. They want to focus on integrations and how we get the drivers paid and how we send the orders and making all those things happen. But it's hard as a business owner if you don't have the reports that you need to make the right decisions. And I think they don't focus on it because it's not as high priority for them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Did you overcome some of those challenges? Like, did you look for people on staff that could help you? Is it something that you just kind of had to get scrappy and figure out yourself?
Basically got scrappy and figured it out and found a good bookkeeper or CPA that can kind of help to piece all those pieces together. And then use Excel spreadsheets, import here, import two reports together to kind of piece them.
No matter how, all the technology can exist in the world, and we will all still live in many spreadsheets, I'm sure. How does it feel? So you've been an entrepreneur for so long, and now you're, on a team, a much bigger team. How does that transition been for you, going from business owner, entrepreneur to working at Dlivrd?
Oh, I think it's great. I don't feel too much of a difference of how I run my day to day and what I'm doing. I mean, besides additional workload and to be doing more things, and that's it. But Chris is super supportive of everything that we're doing and supportive of all the people that work for him and with him. He would kill me. Like, he's going to hear that I say work for him and he's going to kill me because it's work with him, in Dlivrd. And so it's been great. I love it. And it's super exciting to have all these new challenges. I think I'm a serial entrepreneur because I like the challenges. So it works out really great for me.
Yeah. Are there things that you're, experience that you're bringing from your entrepreneurship? I'm beyond just kind of the literal stuff that you've learned owning your own delivery companies, which I'm sure applies to everything you're doing, but just you as an entrepreneur that you think has you show up differently when you're on staff at a company?
Sure. So one of the other companies that I own that we haven't talked about is a virtual assistant business. It's called Falcon Virtual. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in starting that business, which I started it out of necessity because I was going crazy, was just how to delegate and make sure that we put those processes in place to make sure that people can keep moving forward and aren't stuck in one spot spinning their wheels. Delegate and disappear and keep everything moving forward so everyone can have a great experience.
Yeah. If someone's struggling to delegate, what advice would you give them?
I would say when you wake up in the morning and think about the things that you hate to do, pick the one that just never gets done on your list and get rid of that one instead of keeping it at the bottom of your list. I have a really hard time delegating. I said I owned a virtual assistant company, and I don't think I used my own personal virtual assistant until a year and a half ago. And it was super difficult for me to even give that away as from a personal aspect. But it was just once I had that thing on the bottom of my list that never got done and I hated it and I gave it away, it was almost addicting because now I'm like, oh, I don't have to do this one either. Someone else is probably better at me than me to do it. I should have them do it. And then, I'm happy and they do a better job than what I could have done and it gets done faster. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, you playing to your strengths and also, giving someone else the opportunity to play to theirs is always sound advice. Let's talk about the virtual assistant company. I'm super curious about this. What inspired you to start it, and then kind of where did you begin?
So when I owned the restaurant and we were starting our delivery service, I remember doing the delivery myself, having a phone call come in. I was driving around with my laptop in the car trying to dispatch myself, having a phone call come in from an angry customer on my cell phone, and then also being at the door to deliver the food to another customer all at the same time. And I'm like, this is just crazy. Like there has to be a better way. I can't keep doing all this. And you think you can do it in the very beginning because it's slow, but once all these things happen at one time, there's no way. I ended up reading Tim Ferriss's book, A 4-Hour Work Week, which he talked about virtual assistants, not from the delivery perspective, but just the automation perspective and, delegation. And it was super inspiring for me to find my own VA. And I did that for a while. And then my VA, who I originally had to help start City Cheetah, is my head of operations for my VA company. And we've kind of just grown from that.
That's super cool. That it was born out of a need in your industry, in the delivery industry. Can you talk about where is it now? When, kind of how have you grown? What kind of industries do you support? All that.
So a lot of our support that we do now is within the delivery business or the delivery industry, just because I know it and it was easy for us to grow in that aspect. But we have clients, we have real estate clients, we have clients that own their own small businesses that need scheduling help or just email help. We do a lot of marketing for different people, whether it's developing websites or doing social media content. Kind of anything that can be done over the computer, which is almost anything these days, can be done by a virtual assistant. And I think every entrepreneur, especially when you're smaller, you should think about your strengths and weaknesses and delegate out what you're not very good at or what you don't like to do, more importantly.
Yeah, it's so true. Did you look for other solutions that existed already and just didn't feel like they met your need, and that's why you set out to build your own? Or can you talk a little bit to the how did you decide that this was a market that you wanted to go into?
So I originally used a different solution and we were growing quickly and they were not meeting my needs as how quickly we needed to onboard. And the process of onboarding or getting new VAs to support me was a little bit difficult and it wasn't working with our process. So we decided to kind of break off from them, and that's when we developed our own company. And it wasn't even supposed to be our own company at that point. But then when we would talk to people in the industry and they're like, "You're doing what? Can you do that for me?" And I'm like, "Well, sure." And then I would tell AR is my operations manager, and she's like, "Oh, absolutely, we can do that. Let's find somebody to do it." And it was just super organic of how everything came to fruition.
Cool. So did you just kind of hire more assistants as the demand existed or became about, or how did you kind of approach growth there?
Basically, we hired up until we were at about 80% capacity. It's super important for me to make sure that everybody who works for Falcon has enough hours to make their needs met. I don't want anybody to feel like they don't have enough work to do. So we would always kind of just forecast of how many new clients do we think we're bringing in, how many hours they're going to require, and then hire as needed.
And is it a similar working relationship to delivery drivers? Like, are the assistants kind of picking when they work? Is it more rigid? Are they more of an employee type relationship? Could you speak to that?
No, it's more independent contractor. They pick the projects that they want to work on. So, if they feel that they're a fit or they like it, they have the opportunity to work for a specific client. But they do know, ahead of time, the hours are going to be this or that. So it's a little bit of a hybrid from a terms of what you would think a traditional independent contractor would be, but they still just pick what they want, but they know the project ahead of time.
So a little bit more predictability in terms of the amount of hours they're going to get and the kind of work they're going to be doing potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like in any job, there's people that like to work with numbers and who don't want to talk on the phone. And, I want people to work in the capacity that they have fun in, because I think that's where they're going to do the best job and be happy.
I always like to ask this question, especially given how well-versed in the gig space you are. What do you think, like any predictions next 2 to 3 years in the gig economy? What are some of the big changes that you think may occur, or the big trends that people should be paying attention to?
Well, I think 2 come to mind. One is all of the automation, the AI and the robotics and drones. And I'm super excited to see where that heads. I'm not quite sure where that's going to be, but I think that's definitely going to come into play. We've heard about it for a couple of years, but it just seems still a little bit early. But finally, it's starting to feel like we're going to have some more traction soon. And I also think that we're going to see a lot of consolidation among the different players in the space.
In terms of Dlivrd, what's next for Dlivrd? What are you excited about? Where do you think the company will be in a year, 2 years from now?
I'm super excited about the growth that Dlivrd has slated for the next years, both in the different verticals that we're going to be servicing and in the tech that's coming out. I think that Frederick is just going to become smarter and better, which is going to give the drivers a better experience and the clients a better experience. And I think the growth will just continue from that point on.
Very cool. And we'll make sure we link to Dlivrd's website and social channels in the show notes. But if people want to learn more from Ashley, how can people find you?
Sure. Just go to dlivrd.io.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for being here today. I have learned a ton from you. I know our audience is going to love this podcast. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
This podcast was brought to you by Every. We work with gig companies, marketplaces, delivery businesses, and more to pay their workers fast. You can learn more at every.com.